Might be that we all need to be a little concerned when we hear to be wary of the hypocrisy of our culture. The Pharisees during Jesus' time were concerned with all kinds of externals, the trappings of their faith, things that they would wear at religious services, what people said about them, and little, if anything, about truth, about virtue. Well, Jesus warns his apostles, these are people that have been following him. Why? Well, because they were going to be leaders. They were going to be the leaven. Our Lord knew well that great temptation exists of anyone in leadership, whether it be a small position or something great. The great temptation leads us to hypocrisy. Too often, people want to stay in those leadership roles and do whatever they need to do to keep them. You know, I worked in a partisan political environment for 25 years, and I saw firsthand how intoxicating leadership can be. It can lead to a reversal of our values. Instead of using influence for the good of their others, of their constituencies, people care more about staying in power. They care more about that than the truth or the good. It takes a back seat to expediency. And the worst part of it is it's usually irreversible. The Pharisees in Jesus' time had lost touch with what was right. They were totally focused on what was good for them. And if anything posed an obstacle to that, then it had to be removed. So we are told by our Lord, do not be afraid. Don't be afraid to speak out. Do not be concerned with what people of this earth can do to us. We are to be bold. We are to be leaders. We are, and I'm talking about you and I now, we are to be leaven in our culture and to not be afraid what may become of us because our Lord is always with us. I had someone come to me, of course, via Zoom yesterday for spiritual direction. Some may have known for quite a long time, a very good and holy woman. And she told me about something that just happened a couple of days ago where she was confronted by somebody in the parking lot of my old parish. And she told me, and I'm quoting her, I didn't say anything to her. She had said something to this, my spiritual directee. She said, I didn't say anything to her because I was afraid. I was afraid that if I spoke out, she would think less of me. Too often, these difficult conversations that we need to have today are not being undertaken. We fear the loss of esteem of others, maybe our friends, people we live with, fellow classmates. And Pope Francis warns us of that fear that prevents us from having the conversations that we need to have. Just last week, in Fratelli Tutti, he said this: discussion, if it truly makes room for everyone and does not manipulate or conceal information, is a constant stimulus to a better grasp of the truth, or at least its more effective expression. It keeps different sectors from becoming complacent and self-centered in their outlook and their limited concerns. Let us not forget that differences are creative. They create tension, and in the resolution of tension lies humanity's progress. We may have missed a lot of opportunities for progress in the last 4 years. In our house last night, we were talking about John Paul I, who few of you would remember, but poor man was only around for a month. But the thing is that we're thinking about a few days after he died, that John Paul II spoke to us for the very first time from the balcony of St. Peter's. And what he said in that first talk was, "Do not be afraid." Why at that moment? Well, maybe he had a vision of where he hoped for us to go and thought that that might cause us fear. Maybe it was based on his own experiences. And he certainly knew the truth would prevail. It's a difficult time in our country and our world, but our Lord tells us that we are to be the leaven. We are to be truth seekers and truth givers. We are to be bold. We are to be leaders in the discussion that is so desperately needed. And we are not to be afraid.